He sold the Eiffel Tower twice. He scammed Al Capone to his face and lived. He printed money so perfect, the banks couldn't tell the difference. He wasn't a thief. He was an artist. And his canvas was your greed. Meet the man who hacked human nature. Vienna, May 1925. The air in the suite at the Hotel Bristol is thick with expensive cigar smoke and the smell of triumph. A man sits by the window, methodically packing bundles of French banknotes into a leather suitcase. He is not rushing. He is calm. He is precise. The cash on the table amounts to 70,000 francs, plus a massive bribe. A fortune worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in today's economy. The man is Victor Lustig. To the hotel staff, he is a charming, tipping aristocrat, known simply as the Count. But the money in his hands does not come from a family inheritance or a legitimate business deal. It is the proceeds from the sale of 7,000 tons of high-grade iron scrap. There is just one problem with the merchandise. That iron is not sitting in a scrapyard. It is standing in the center of Paris. It is 300 meters tall, and it does not belong to Victor Lustig. He has just successfully sold the Eiffel Tower. Most criminals would take this money, disappear into the shadows, and never breathe a word of the crime. But Victor Lustig is not most criminals. He is a man who understands that reality is negotiable. In fact, he is so confident in his ability to hack the human mind that within 30 days he will return to Paris, check into the exact same hotel, and attempt to sell the Eiffel Tower all over again. To understand how a man steals a 7,000-ton monument, you must first understand that Victor Lustig did not look like a thief. He did not lurk in alleyways or break windows. He sat in the finest dining rooms in Europe, wearing suits tailored on Savile Row, speaking 5 languages with the casual grace of a diplomat. He called himself the Count, and when he walked into a room, heads turned. Not out of fear, but out of admiration. Lustig understood a fundamental flaw in the human operating system that most criminals miss. He knew that people are not scammed because they are stupid. They are scammed because they are arrogant. They believe they are too smart to be fooled, and that is exactly the crack in the armor he would exploit. He didn't pick locks. He picked egos. He operated by a strict code, a set of personal commandments that he followed with religious discipline. While other criminals were buying guns, Lustig was mastering the art of submission. "Never look smarter than the mark," he wrote. "If you appear brilliant, the victim raises their shields. But if you play the fool, if you fumble a word, if you seem a bit slow, a bit out of your depth, the victim relaxes. They think they are the shark. They think they are taking advantage of you." Never argue was his second law. Arguments create walls. Agreement builds bridges. He would sit for hours, sipping brandy, waiting for his target to reveal a political opinion or a religious grievance. And the moment they did, Lustig didn't just nod. He became their most passionate ally. He validated their worldview so completely that by the end of the night, the victim didn't just trust him. They felt they had finally found the one person on earth who truly understood them. It is early spring 1925. Lustig arrives in Paris. The city is alive with the electric energy of the Jazz Age. But underneath the champagne and the flapper dresses, the economy is struggling to recover from the Great War. Lustig sits at a sidewalk cafe, unfolding a newspaper. He isn't looking for news. He is looking for an opening. His eyes stop on a small, buried article. It is a dry report on the state of the Eiffel Tower. The monument, built for the 1889 World's Fair, was never meant to be permanent. Now, 30 years later, it is a rusting, peeling financial disaster. The maintenance costs are bleeding the city dry. The journalist ends the article with a cynical joke. Ideally, the whole thing should just be sold for scrap. Lustig lowers the paper. He looks at the rusting spire in the distance. He doesn't see a national symbol. He sees an opportunity. He signals the waiter for the check. The plan is already fully formed. He isn't going to steal the Eiffel Tower. He is going to let the French government sell it to him. Or at least, that is what he is going to tell 5 of the wealthiest, hungriest men in Paris. The preparations begin in a dim rented room in Paris. Lustig stands over a desk, watching a hired counterfeiter press a heavy brass seal onto crisp, cream-colored stationery. The emblem of the French Republic sinks into the paper with a satisfying crunch. Beneath it, the typed letters spell out a lie that looks more real than the truth. Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. With these papers in his briefcase, Lustig does not book a meeting room at a government office. That would be too risky, too exposed. Instead, he books the most expensive suite at the Hôtel de Crillon. The Crillon is not just a hotel. It is a palace of marble and gold leaf, a place where kings sleep and history is written. Lustig knows that the architecture itself will do half the work for him. When the 5 invitees walk through those massive doors, the silence of the lobby intimidates them. These are scrap metal dealers, men used to the noise of crushing machines and the smell of rust. Here, treading on thick velvet carpets, they feel small. They feel privileged just to be invited. Lustig waits for them in the suite, standing by the window with the practiced boredom of a high-ranking bureaucrat. He pours drinks. He offers cigars. He speaks softly, forcing the men to lean in, creating an instant physical conspiracy. He drops the bomb with a heavy sigh. "Gentlemen," he says, gesturing to the tower looming in the distance. "The government is bleeding money. The tower is rotting. The maintenance costs are strangling us." He pauses, letting the smoke drift between them. "We have made a difficult decision. We are going to sell it for scrap." The room goes silent. This is 7,000 tons of iron. The sheer scale of the contract is enough to make any one of these men wealthy for generations. But Lustig raises a hand. "There is a condition. This must remain an absolute secret. If the public finds out we are tearing down the Eiffel Tower before the deal is done, there will be riots in the streets." He watches their faces. He is scanning for the tell. Most of the dealers look skeptical. They are calculating logistics, worrying about the risk. But one man is not doing the math. André Poisson is sitting on the edge of his chair. He is a provincial businessman, rich but socially invisible. He is desperate to break into the inner circle of Parisian industry, to be taken seriously by the elite. He adjusts his tie, glancing nervously at the other dealers. He isn't looking at the deal as a demolition project. He sees it as his ticket to immortality. Lustig catches Poisson's eye and offers a faint, almost imperceptible smile. He has found his pigeon. The hook is not in the metal. It is in the man's vanity, but silence is dangerous. As the deal nears the finish line, Poisson goes cold. He stops returning calls. When Lustig finally corrals him for a private meeting, the scrap dealer looks pale. His eyes are darting around the room. He confesses his wife, a woman with instincts far sharper than his own, smells a rat. "Why is this all so secret?" she asked. "Why are we paying a government official in a hotel room and not at the ministry?" The deal is hanging by a thread. An amateur con man would argue. An ordinary criminal would pull out more forged documents, shout about his authority, or threaten to cancel the contract. Lustig does none of that. In his mind, his primary commandment flashes: never look smarter than the mark. Lustig sighs heavily and shifts his posture. The confident bureaucrat vanishes. He slumps in his chair, staring at his hands. Suddenly, he looks small, tired, and pathetic. He lowers his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Monsieur Poisson," he says, "you have a fortune I can only dream of. Yes, I am a high-ranking official, but my salary..." He doesn't finish the sentence. He simply rubs his thumb and forefinger together. The universal, international language of corruption. I have bills, I have a status to maintain, and the state is not generous. Across the table, the tension leaves Poisson's body like air from a punctured balloon. He leans back. He smiles. Finally, he understands. This isn't a scam. This isn't a spy novel. It is just a corrupt official looking for a kickback. This is a language Poisson speaks fluently. An honest man selling the Eiffel Tower is suspicious, but a crook selling the Eiffel Tower? That is just business. Poisson reaches into his jacket pocket. He pulls out a checkbook and scribbles a figure for the full value of the metal, a sum equivalent to millions in today's money. Then, he reaches into his briefcase and pulls out a thick envelope stuffed with large bills. The commission. Lustig takes the envelope. He doesn't count it. He shakes Poisson's hand with the firmness of a true accomplice. As Poisson walks out of the hotel, dreaming of his name in lights, Lustig is already closing the suitcase. By the time that check clears, the Deputy Director General will be in a private compartment on the express train to Vienna, and André Poisson will be the proud owner of absolutely nothing. In Vienna, Lustig buys every French newspaper he can find. He sits in coffee houses, scanning the headlines, waiting for the explosion. He expects a manhunt. He expects his face to be plastered on every front page in Europe. The man who stole the tower. But day 1 passes. Silence. Day 2. Silence. A week. Nothing. Slowly, the realization dawns on him. André Poisson, the man who wanted so desperately to be respected, was too humiliated to go to the police. He realized that admitting he bought the Eiffel Tower would turn him into the laughingstock of France. He chose to swallow a loss worth millions, rather than face the shame. For most men, getting away with the crime of the century is a signal to retire. For Victor Lustig, it is a signal that the market is still open. In a move of staggering arrogance, he packs his trunk and returns to Paris 1 month later. He contacts 5 new scrap dealers. He books a new hotel room. He starts the script from line 1. But lightning does not strike twice. One of the new victims is less insecure and more suspicious. He goes to the police. Lustig catches wind of the raid just in time, fleeing the city with the authorities snapping at his heels. Europe is now too hot. The Count needs a new playground. He boards a liner across the Atlantic. Destination: the United States. In America, the Roaring Twenties are in full swing, and greed is the national currency. Lustig reinvents himself. He travels with a heavy, custom-made mahogany box. It looks like a scientific instrument, covered in brass dials and chrome levers. He calls it the Rumanian Box. He invites a wealthy mark into his room and demonstrates. He inserts a crisp $100 bill into a slot. He turns a crank. Gears grind, chemicals hiss, and then they wait. It takes 6 hours for the chemical reaction to duplicate the fibers, Lustig explains, checking his pocket watch. 6 hours later, he pulls a lever. Out comes the original bill and, miraculously, a second, wet, perfectly printed $100 bill. He takes both to the bank. The teller accepts them. They are real. The victim begs to buy the machine. Lustig acts reluctant. He finally agrees to sell it for $30,000, over $500,000 in today's money. By the time the victim waits the 6 hours for the next bill to print, only to find blank paper spitting out, Lustig is 2 states away, sipping champagne in a first-class train car. But scaring rich bankers was easy. Lustig wanted a real challenge. He headed to Chicago. He walked into the Lexington Hotel, past the armed guards, and asked for a meeting with the most dangerous man in America. Al Capone. The room is thick with smoke. Capone sits behind his desk, staring at this dapper European dandy. Lustig doesn't flinch. He asks Capone for $50,000 to invest in a stock scheme. He promises to double it in 60 days. Capone narrows his eyes. He has killed men for looking at him the wrong way. But he is intrigued. He hands over the cash with a simple warning. If you screw me, I won't sue you. I'll kill you. Lustig takes the money. He doesn't invest it. He puts it in a safety deposit box and leaves it there for 2 months. 60 days later, he walks back into Capone's office. He looks defeated. His suit is rumpled. He places the $50,000 on the desk. Every cent. Al, he says, head bowed. The deal collapsed. I lost the profit, but I couldn't bear to lose your principal. Here is your money back. The room goes quiet. Capone is stunned. He is surrounded by thieves, liars, and killers. He has never met a man who returned $50,000 when he could have run. You're an honest guy, Count. Capone grunts. He reaches into his own pocket and peels off $5,000, about $90,000 today. Here, buy yourself a drink. Lustig takes the cash. He walks out into the Chicago night. He had never intended to double the money. The $5,000 was the target all along. He had conned the most violent gangster in history using the one weapon Capone wasn't defended against: aggressive honesty. By the early 1930s, the Secret Service wasn't just looking for Lustig, they were obsessed with him. He had partnered with a chemist named William Watts and flooded the American economy with millions of dollars in counterfeit banknotes. They were so flawless that bank tellers couldn't detect them. They were known simply as the Lustig notes. He was the ghost in the machine. He had no permanent address, no fingerprints on file, and a dozen aliases. The entire federal government was hunting him, and they were coming up empty. But Victor Lustig had one weakness. It wasn't greed. It wasn't hubris. It was women. In 1935, he was hiding out in New York City with his mistress, Billie Mae. But for a man like Lustig, one life was never enough. He began a secret affair with the young girlfriend of one of his associates. He thought he was being discreet. He thought he could manage his romantic life with the same precision he managed his con. He was wrong. Billie Mae found out. She didn't scream. She didn't throw a vase. She simply walked to a payphone on a rainy Manhattan street corner. She dialed the number for the Secret Service. When the agent answered, she didn't ask for a reward. She didn't ask for immunity. She just said, "He's at the corner of West 72nd Street." On a spring afternoon, agents swarmed his car. As they handcuffed him, Lustig didn't run. He smoothed the lapels of his coat, smiled at his captors, and calmly asked if anyone had a cigarette. He was sentenced to 20 years in Alcatraz, the Rock. The man who had spent his life in the plush velvet suites of Paris and the jazz clubs of Chicago was now locked in a 6x9 concrete cell, surrounded by the cold waters of the San Francisco Bay. He died there in 1947 of pneumonia, but the Count had one final joke to tell. When the medical examiner filled out his death certificate, he paused at the line labeled occupation. He didn't write criminal. He didn't write con artist. Whether it was a clerical error or Lustig's final whispered manipulation from his deathbed, the official record of the man who sold the Eiffel Tower reads simply, apprentice salesman. Looking back, the sale of the Eiffel Tower wasn't just a theft, it was a masterclass in human psychology. Lustig proved that if you want to sell a lie, you don't wrap it in fantasy, you wrap it in the victim's own greed. You let them believe that they are the smart ones, that they are the insiders. The Eiffel Tower still stands tall over Paris, its iron rivets holding strong. But somewhere out there, right now, A phone is ringing. An email is landing. A once-in-a-lifetime deal is being whispered in a hotel lobby, and someone is reaching for their wallet simply because they forgot the count's most important lesson. So, the next time you are offered a contract that demands your absolute silence, or promised a return that defies basic arithmetic, stop. Take a breath. Remember the man who sold the Eiffel Tower, and ask yourself, is the Count sitting across the table from me? If you enjoy stories about the people who hacked the system, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. We are just getting started. Let me know in the comments below, do you think you would have spotted the con? Or would Lustig have walked away with your money too? I'm Henry. I'll see you in the next one.